Hi, and welcome to another edition of MasterVisualStudio.net. My name's Jeff Daniels, and today we're going to take a look at how to build and publish a .NET DLL to an Azure Artifact Feed as a NuGet package. Now that sounds like a mouthful and like there's a lot there, but we're going to get through it pretty quickly, and it's very handy if you've got some DLLs you want to share throughout your projects and you want to have an easy place to store them and to be able to update them. So without any further ado, let's get started. All right, so we're here in Azure DevOps, and the first thing we'd like to do is we're in our DevOps Nuget project, which is a brand new project I've just created, and we'll go over to the repository that we're going to use and initialize it. So we'll do that by coming down here and selecting to create a gitignore file, and we'll use Visual Studio, that template to initialize it. So now we've got an initialized repository to work with, and we'll want to clone this over to Visual Studio 2017. So when we clone this over to Visual Studio, what we're going to want to do is create an initial solution for the DLL. And that DLL is where we're going to build, check that in, create an Azure build to create and publish our NuGet package. Once that's all set and we can see how that's working, then we'll go back to Visual Studio, create another solution that'll just be a console app, and from there, we'll reference and pull updates down from our artifact feed for NuGet. So let's get started with cloning this over to Visual Studio. Okay, once you're signed in, it'll just take a minute for Visual Studio to connect over and start cloning the repository. Even though there's not a lot there yet, it's got some initial setup for the Git in the background. Now, if you don't like this directory setup here, you can choose a different one, and I'll show you where you can set that setting if you need to. I'll go ahead and just take it right into that folder, that's fine. So this will just take a minute. And once this completes, we'll have the Team Explorer over here, and if we go over to settings, we'll be able to switch where this local path is. As I mentioned, I'm going to leave mine like this for now, but I'll show you at least where you can change it if you're interested in doing that. All right, looks like it's just about done. And there we go. Okay, so if you do want to change that directory, come over here to settings, go to your global settings, and then choose your default repository location. And that'll let you adjust that. All right, so now we've got this empty repository with our gitignore file. What we want to do is add a new solution to it. So let's go ahead and do that. And in this case, we're going to add a .NET Core class library. And we will call this mylib. I know, not a creative name, but it'll at least get us through. We want to uncheck the create new Git repository because we do already have one set up here. All right, so now that we've got our new project, let's get that out of there, have a little more room to work. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. We're not going to do a lot with this class. With this library. We're basically just going to delete this class. We're going to add in one other class. And we'll just call this libinfo. And we'll use this later to test to see that we're actually pulling the updated information from this library. So we're going to make that a public class. We'll add a property. If you don't know the hotkey, if you just type in prop and then hit the tab key, it'll autofill the property syntax for you. We're just going to make a string. Hit tab again, and then you'll be able to enter the name of your property, and we'll just call it version info. And in this case, this is not going to be the most useful library. Essentially what we want to do here is just have something that we can see get updated as we push new NuGet versions up to the artifact feed. So we're just going to get, and we'll return So we'll start with that. Now I'm going to do Control-Shift-B just to build the project, get all the dependencies and Nuget restored, and it looks like that's all set. So now we've got our initial library that we want to use to start building through the Azure DevOps portal and publishing out to the artifact library. So let's now look at what we have for changes. Sure, that's all good. And for these changes, you can see really all I did was add in this library, added the solution, and then put in this one file. So that all looks good. So we'll just say initial check-in, and we'll push that up. There's actually one other thing I wanted to show you here before so we'll do a second check-in in just a minute. I want to right-click on this library, go over to Properties, and then take a look at the versioning of this. So if we go to Package, you'll see that it's called mylib and it's version 1.0.0. Now, what I want to do here is just put in, just to show you that this does get updated eventually when we do this, I'm going to put in a 1.0, and you'll see that those update down here for the assembly versions and the file versions. And we'll see how to automate that during our build. So let's just save that. And then I want to come back over here and get that change in just so we'll have that. And we'll push that change up. All right, I think now we're going to be ready to jump over to DevOps and start building out our artifact feed in our library. Okay, so we are back over here in Azure DevOps. And as you can see, this is just how we left the project. So if I hit F5 to refresh, we should now see our new library. And there's the solution. So all is good. Should have a couple of commits. We do. So let's go ahead and get our build going. If we go over to Pipelines and then Builds, see we have no pipelines yet. We can just close this out. We'll say New Pipeline. Now you've got these if you want to start with, this is essentially YAML, which is the way that it seems like it's going for some of these build processes, but we're going to start with our classic editor. We're going to take the Azure repo for Git that we have here, take our project and the master branch. Now, certainly normally you would be working in different branches. This is super simplified. I'm sure you all get that. I'm going to click on Continue. And because we're building a DLL here, we're just going to say build and test a .NET or Windows Classic desktop solution. And we can start with that template and then we'll clear out the things that we don't need. Is probably the most straightforward way to go. And you'll see here, once we do that, it's going to set up Nuget for us with version 4.4.1. And this pipeline is then going to do a Nuget restore for the solution. So it'll find our solution and restore that. So that's all good. And then we're going to build the solution, and there's only one project in there. So that's fine. These tests, we don't have any, so we'll go ahead and just remove that. Then we've got it's going to publish the symbols, copy the files to the artifact directory, and then publish a drop. So we're going to massage this a little bit in a minute, but I wanted to go through and just kick off one build so we can see how this goes through the first time, and then we'll go through and set it up with all the different customizations that we want. So let's do save and queue, and we'll kick off that. And I will fast forward through this for you, so we'll be right back. Okay, so that build has completed. And real quick, let's just take a look at the artifact that came out of that build. So if we go over here to the drop file that was created, and we drill down to our library, you can see the release, and here's our DLL. And if we click the little ... we can download that. We'll keep it, and we will show in folder. There we go. So here's our DLL. And if I right click on that and we go to properties, we can see that the version of that is the one that we had set up when we were in Visual Studio. So that did not get updated. And as a matter of fact, we might do this a couple times, so I am just going to add file version over here so we can see that. Okay, so we will minimize that. Now the next thing we want to do is to go through and auto version this DLL. So let's take a look at how we do that. Now the way that I've been doing my versioning is with a custom task that was in the marketplace. So I'd like to give props to that developer for doing that. Let's take a look. If we go over to our build, we click on edit. So we'll add in a new build step right after the use Nuget. And the one that we want is to do a search for assembly. And we want assembly info. And hats off to this guy. This is a very slick little addition. Puts it out there for free. So thank you, Mr. Richards, for that contribution. So we'll go ahead and get that for free. Then once you do that, it'll ask you which organization you want to have it for. We'll choose ours, Master Visual Studio, and install that. And then we're good. So if we close that window and we come back here, what you want to do is just hit F5. We'll just refresh. Go through that process again, select Nuget 4.4, click Add, and then come over here and search for assembly. And there it is. So it's installed. And not sure why it's not letting us add it. Let's refresh again. Come over here, click on Add. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take the .NET Core and .NET Standard. So let's add that. Now, of course, if you added it and it ended up at the bottom, you can just grab these by these handles and drag them where you want them. We want it before the Nuget restore or the build. So let's put it up here towards the top. So a few things we want to do here. This is essentially going to go in and we want to update those fields in our project file based to give it a unique ID so we know that it's always incrementing as we do new builds. So the first thing we want to do is say, where's our source folder? And we're going to navigate over to where our project is, which is right here. So we want to go take that folder. This is already going to point to the only project that's in that. We want to have it set to insert attributes. And then down the bottom here, we want to scroll down and we're looking to update 3 fields: assembly version, assembly file version, and package version. And they're all going to get the same value. We want to put in the build number. So let's just put that in each of these. Okay, so where's that coming from? We're going to go customize that value. So that's a variable that's included as part of the build process from DevOps, but it does allow you to override how it's built. And you can see right now, if you go to the Options tab, you'll see there's a build number format, and this is what it'll be by default. Now what we want it to be is a 4-character kind of custom, semi-custom. We want it to start with a hard-coded number so that we're going to start with always being on version 1.0, so that if somebody does want to do a major or a minor revision, they should have to come in here and make that change to signify that. But as far as the revision or patches, those are fine. We can update those last 2 digits of this. And the way we're going to make sure that this is always incrementing is we're going to start with making this 3rd digit be the day of year. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this. This is just one for this example. And then after the day of year, we're going to do dot revision. And we're going to want a colon and then an R. So there we go. Okay, so this will take the revision. So this is what day of the year it was, and this is what build on that day for this particular Azure automated build that we have. So as we go through the day, if we're doing 5 or 6 builds, this will continually increment. So we'll know we'll get a new increasing number each time. So we've got that piece. So now let's go over and save this and just run this build again. I think we've got everything we need. And again, I will speed us through this process so that you don't have to sit through it. All right, and we're back, and let's just go take a look at the new artifact that was generated. So if we go over to the drop from our build, drill all the way down to the DLL, and let's download that and have a look at it. We trust it. So we'll show that in folder. There we go. So this is the second one that we've just done. And we will look at the properties of that. And you can see it has the 1.0 that we wanted and then 298. So if anyone wants to guess what day of the year that is October 24th. And this is the first build of the day. So there we go. When we do the next one, that should bump automatically to a 2. So we're getting closer. Now we've got it building and auto versioning. So the next thing we want to do is to start making this into a Nuget package. So let's look at that. All right, so we're going to go back over to our build now and make some adjustments so that rather than just putting out this DLL every time, we're going to want to build a Nuget package, publish that out to our artifacts, and then be able to use that from our other projects. So first, let's make sure that we have an artifact feed here set up. So we're going to go over here and create our first feed. And we'll just call this Master Visual Studio. And that's fine. Team project. Great. Oh, apparently there's already one. So we'll just give it a little bit more of a name. There we go. So there's our feed. There's nothing in there currently. So we'll go back to our build. And we're going to do a little bit of cleanup here. So now that we're not going to be publishing this as a DLL, there's a few things we don't need. We don't need to publish these symbols. So we can just remove those. And we don't need to do this drop the artifact. So we can get rid of that. So what we want is to copy the files. And these are now getting copied over to the staging folder. We want to say the files that we want are going to be from our lib, and then underneath that we can just do this. And that other change that we want to do here is if you are working with an older library that is before .NET Core, you can use the Nuget packager as part of one of these tasks through the pipeline. Because we're doing core, it does not work with the Nuget packager that's in here. So in order to get that to work, we just need to add in this little parameter to the MS build arguments when we're doing our build. That'll generate a package for us. So now that we've got that package, we want to go over here and we'll just get the package files, and then we'll get that copied over to our staging folder. And then the last piece we're going to want is to go get the Nuget task and say, let's go publish. We're going to select that and do a push. This is all fine. It's going to go find our Nuget package. We're going to push it to one of our feeds. And we apparently have two, but we're just going to use the second one that we just created. And that should be good. So let's save that and see if this thing publishes out for us. All right, so it looks like it did get published out, or at least the build completed. So if we go over to artifacts and we refresh, should have already been there. So let's say connect to feed. Oh wait, that's what it is. We're on the wrong feed. There we go. There's our library. And as you can see, still the 298th day, at least for another 15 minutes. And we're on the second build of the day. So now we've got our library being published to our feed, our artifact feed in Azure. And the next step we're going to have to do is take a look at how do we create a new project, reference that, and pull that in. So let's take a look at how we accomplish that. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where this is now showing up in our feed. And if we want to go over here, we want to get the connect to feed, and we want this package source URL, all of this. So if you click on this, it'll copy it. And then we'll just minimize that. And then we're going to jump back over to Visual Studio. So right now in Visual Studio, we've got this project up there, which is our older project. I'm just going to open up another copy of Visual Studio so we can make a second solution that will not be part of our repository at all, but we want to still reference that library from the artifact feed. So we want to make a new project. And we're just going to do a console app. And we will put this into, just put this in development. And we'll just call it not great naming conventions, I know, but we'll create a new directory for that solution. So there we go. And for some reason, Visual Studio likes to get confused about who I am, whether it's I'm working for my day job for Temple Logic, which is what I do, or making these videos for Master Visual Studio. And I do switch back and forth between users, so it sometimes gets confused. But as we can see here, we've got this basic console app, and we want to go over and bring in a package. So we're going to say manage Nuget packages, right? And so if we come over here and we're saying we want to go find mylib, right? It's not going to find it because, well, it'll find a bunch, but not the one that we're looking for. Apparently somebody else did a mylib.core, so we could download that one, but we're looking for the one that we just did. So let's go over, and you can see we've got some already configured, but we're going to go configure our new one. So we're going to click on add, and the name is going to be Master Studio Feed. And the package source is going to be what we just copied when we were in the artifact feed. So if you remember, we were just over here, we clicked on connect to feed, and we copied this. That's what needs to go into this bottom source field. So we'll click OK. And then we'll come over here and select that. And now let's see if we can find our new Nuget package. There it is in our second build of the day. So why don't we go ahead and add that to our project. And once that comes up, that all looks good. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to do a Control-Shift-B just so we get a good build. And I'm going to go, we'll leave that in. I want to put in a console read line. And then I want to do a console write line. And what we want is to get our new, so we want to create a, so we have mylib.libinfo. Okay, so it's libinfo. So we're going to do libinfo. And I'm just going to do control dot to bring in the namespace. So using mylib, again, that's just the control key and then hitting the period. You'll get that pop up. And we'll just call this mylib. And this is going to equal the new one. And then down here for the console write, we're just going to write out mylib dot, did I name that the same? I did. Oh, that was silly. I mean, I guess it's fine. There we go. Version info. So now, if we go ahead and run this, we should see that initial string, and we'll just bring this over, initial library info, right? So great, the library is working. We're able to pull it down from our cloud Nuget feed. Now what we want to do is just come back over here and say we'll just say next version. Okay, and we're just going to do a build on that. I'm sure that still works. Going to come over here, check in our changes. Updated with new string. And we will commit that. Now if we wanted to make it even fancier, we could have just set up that continuous integration build, and then we wouldn't even have to jump back over to Azure, but we did not set that up. So we'll go over to the build, edit. Now if you do want to set that up, it is so simple. Just click on triggers and just enable continuous integration. But we're going to come back over here and just come over to the build that we want and just queue it. And once we do, that's going to kick off that build again that I will fast forward through. And once we're done, we should see that we've got a new build, it should be number 3, out to the artifact feed. Okay, and that build has completed. If we go look at our artifacts, there we go. We've got the 3rd build of the day. So we're just going to jump back over to our console app and go back over to manage packages, Nuget packages. And you can see right now we're on 2.2 or 298.2, and there is a 298.3 up there. So let's just click on update. It just restored over the new Nuget package, which is great. And now we're just going to come over here and run it. You should see our new string. Here it is, next version. So there you go. We were able to get that pulled down with minimal amount of work. So there is one final item that I'd like to point out here, and what that pertains to is if you're going to use this Nuget package in a build that's going to go through DevOps, which I would assume at some point you may likely do that, there's one other piece you're going to want to know is if you go into your build, and this would be a change that you would make in the build for that console app, but I'm going to show it to you here just so you'll be aware of it. As normal for that console app, we would still do all of this. When we got to the Nuget restore, you would want to make sure that you went to your feeds, and a feed I select here, and then you would go pick the feed where the Nuget package is. And that's so that during the build process for that console app that we did, the Nuget restore is going to be able to find that package up in your DevOps artifact feed. Without that, your build's going to fail saying that it couldn't find that package. So make sure that once you decide to use these Nuget packages in another project, that during those build processes that you set up, you go back in here and set the feed that you want to point to. And you also want to have this use packages from Nuget so that it'll be able to find the other packages aside from the one that you did. So that's going to do it for this how to build and publish a .NET DLL to an Azure Artifact Feed as a Nuget package. So I hope you all found that helpful. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me here on LinkedIn. It's Jeff Daniels. And then my day job at templelogic.com. Feel free to hit me up at either one. And we'll see you in the next video.